It recently dawned on me that I'd only spoken about this game within lists or some sort of feature of it, never in its entirety as it featured on the channel.
We're about to find out. Now come on.
The game was released in the same year as Monster Hunter World and God of War OG on the PlayStation 4. It was a hell of a time to own that system. This didn't get pushed aside. It's a game that I finished over on the PlayStation 4 Pro, and I put 71 hours into it. I'm now going through it on my PlayStation 5, and I have a few theories about why we're not seeing a 60 frame per second patch.
We're stuck in the middle of some ancient feud.
Rockstar have got GTA 6 coming out in 2025. I imagine it's going to be right at the last quarter. We've got the whole of 2024 to fill in.
Yeah, it don't feel right. I could have told you.
I think they're going to do exactly what they did with GTA 5 and sell us a PlayStation 5 version of this game that sits on the SSD and has its own online lobbies, etc. However, they have pulled a lot of the development of the online with this game. That's probably due to a large amount of that team having to work on that new Grand Theft Auto. So the theories are still up in the air a bit. Why have I chosen now and so long for this game to get spoken about at length on the channel? Well, recently, over maybe about 2.5 months, maybe 3 months, it seems to be cropping up a little bit more in social media shorts and reels. The game is also supporting this deep audience that exists on YouTube with various sort of secrets, different lore items within the game, and I'm still seeing, back to these reels and shorts, strange things happening that you didn't have occur on your game. I'm not talking about glitches, just absolutely amazing variables that these NPCs kick out.
What fun we had riding together. What a goddamn mess we're making of things.
My main point being it is still kicking out things I've not seen. 6 years down the line, the game churns out stuff that both surprises and amazes and amuses me. And that's a conversation I want to have. There's an almost tectonic debate about whether this game is slow and boring or just extremely well paced and set in the environment that doesn't really promote, jet aircraft and H-bombs and aliens coming out of saucers. It's very much a laid back universe. But at the same time, I feel when push comes to shove, it does deliver on some extremely white hot action. But there is a point to be made here, particularly with a lot of the animations, particularly with the walk and run speed of Arthur himself. It's a debate that will go on for a long time. Was Red Dead 1 a white knuckle roller coaster? Not predominantly, but it did feature a slightly more action-based campaign, and that's an interesting subject. I happen to really like the campaign in Red Dead 2 and 1, the change of environment in the first one and the use of a lot of howitzer cannons and set pieces is amazing. This, it's a little bit more strung out. I think they wanted to make it a bit more narrative driven, introduce quite a lot of characters and location changes with the gang and what happens to them. So that would have been an initial shock, I think, to people making the jump from the first one. Just briefly, during the playing of this campaign on the PlayStation 5, I've only just actually opened up the main city, and it's now that I'm realizing how crisp and beautiful the light looks at night within the inner city. Is pretty amazing. They flicker, you can tell it's candle against the sort of primitive electricity they had going on back then. Incredible stuff. All of the shops, all of the interiors, which we'll get to in a second, was really mind-blowing. This should be performing at better specs on this 10th generation system, but for what we have right now is pretty gobsmacking. Back to that topic of Rockstar potentially releasing an SSD version of Red Dead Redemption 2 within the year of 2024, because I don't see much else on their calendar. This could also point to them bowling in all of the DLC for that particular edition, like they have previously. And talking of previously, I was absolutely astounded that we didn't see an Undead Nightmare release with this game bundled in with either a 10th gen release as an equivalent for Halloween this year, but nothing. And that was so good. That was one of the reasons I rebought the first one over on my 9th generation system, because again, they bolted it into the singular pack. It really made sense with the money, and it was some of the best content in and around Red Dead Redemption 1, I feel.
Go get yourself something to eat.
Sir, I want you to have this.
Thanks, friend.
It's nice to give something instead of just begging.
There is, if you're feeling really adventurous, a PlayStation 5 mod that allows this game to run at 60 frames per second. The only footage I've seen of it is on a chipped machine, so I'm not too sure what you have to do on your side to get that thing working, and meddling around with that sort of stuff against how strict Sony are with their operating systems is a surefire way to have a mishap. But it is a thing. I also want to be clear that I'm not too into the online of this game. I did dip my toe into it on initial launch, and they pushed loads of content into it, and I'm aware of the backlash when Rockstar Online announced that they're sort of pulling newer content for that series to come out, which was a bit of a shame because they would add very cool co-op missions. That's a whole different slice of cake, that playing this game with a mate or with a posse and doing co-op PvE style events is absolutely excellent. There's also quite a distinct correlation I've noticed with people I talk to about the pace of this game and their dislike of it, and whether they've actually finished the content on a single player level. And I think everybody that's gone right through the single player story and narrative and are fully aware of how cool that journey is for Arthur and some of the writing and characters and culmination of that story, that really does weigh against some of this slower, more mundane, day-to-day gameplay. That's a really good point, I feel. And if you're halfway through this game, or nearly got to the end, or sort of at the sweet spot in the middle where you can access everything and it's just overwhelming or too tempting not to move forward, I recommend going right through the story and then replaying the game again, maybe up the difficulty a little bit. And that sort of neatly brings me back to that Reels and Shorts conversation about being pointed out tiny little details or little behaviours that you didn't clock that first playthrough round. This game is so huge when you look at the non-campaign content. This thin layer of petrol on top of the water, I was not spotting details like that when I first logged into this game. We have also had a very large amount of water go under the bridge on the open world gaming front. We saw Cyberpunk release, we've seen umpteen Assassin's Creed and Ubisoft nightmarish games come rolling out, and we've also seen Starfield and even Fallout 76. So going back to this is a bit of a test, really. That's another reason for putting it out in 2023, is that does the damn thing actually still hold up as an open world game? I think I can say with full confidence that it's probably one of the best open world games ever made for modern consoles. That goes for 9th and 10th. This beats everything in its class, and the world, the animal species in the compendium, 150 something plus different species just within this map size that you've got going in Red Dead 2. That doesn't even bring me over to the plant types or fish. Absolutely ridiculous what is coming off the back of also one of the more emotional and dramatic Western story campaigns ever written for modern gaming. That brings me over to the engine, the Rage engine and its update. This is the most modern fruition of that engine. GTA 5's is a little bit more primitive. That mud, the footsteps, which is identical to the snow, but we're not going to worry about that because when we clapped eyes on that intro in 2018, we didn't know this was going to be holding up so strong still 6 years later.
All right. I'm gonna give this a taste.
Back to that GT5 conversation and engine. When I did the direct comparison of the PlayStation 4 version and that new PlayStation 5 SSD edition that they made us pay extra money for and put us in separate online lobbies, there is no improvement on the engine. There is RT introduced, ray tracing, and again that is extremely noticeable and the reflections look incredible. I'm trying to think what they could inject with this other than 60 frames and 4K, which I think's feasible for the game. Would we get anything else on that RT front?
Ledger, watch, pistol.
And that pulls me over to interiors. Now I think for an open world game, the interiors in Red Dead Redemption 2 don't get spoken about enough. It's got a cover mechanic that feels almost Splinter Cell natural. And I've said that before. I was reviewing Watch Dogs 2 the other day, and again, similar, really familiar and reliable feeling system. I hate to keep doing it, but Cyberpunk 2077 is just full of closed or locked doors. Most of the time you're going in interior, it's woven into the single player missions or gigs. With this, just about every structure you can access, and that is incredibly important when selling an open world game, I feel. It can really detach you when you realise that the buildings are nothing but loaded in rectangles. And this is the last I'll say on the subject. Ray trace shadows in some of these cellars, in some of these really cool candle lit caverns that you end up going in looking for some piece of gold. There's a 12 kg cougar waiting at the bottom there for you. That interior to exterior sort of light bleed out. Metal Gear Solid 5 was one of the other games that I first saw that on, and it's a really incredible sensation. You see it everywhere now, going in and out of shadow with open world games. That out of campaign content also is so rich. Talking to people off the beaten track, doing side quests and answering the sort of strangers whenever they turn up, or doing these extreme little puzzles that they put in the map, and even massive fights, discovering the gangs, which I think there's 7 of.
Damn you! I still exist!
That is really the sort of content that I love, and the best open world games, I think, will always push side quests and other activities being just as enjoyable as that main questline campaign. And recently, I know I have been dirtying it the whole video, Cyberpunk 2077 has really pulled its socks up on that front, giving some amazing gigs and vehicle and combat improvements that mean not just having to go down that story is the only good bit of gameplay in there. Now, talking of gameplay, and just very quickly and patronisingly, a quick capture tip. Can you see the black lines on top of the bottom of the screen? That means I'm in the cinematic mode, which is brought on by holding down the black button on the pad. In my sort of simpleton's mindset, I would always turn that off once dismounting the horse. I thought it was just there to travel, to make it look cool, so you didn't get bored. If you had a long way to go on the back of something, you could just chill and get a look at the landscape. Well, you can leave it on, and it resulted in some quite mad scenes. You can get the camera to be fixed and walk into an area. I'm quite surprised. I've not seen a lot more people having more fun with this, recreating famous scenes. It was really incredible thing. I can't believe 5 years have passed and I hadn't spotted it. I recently put a video out about an old JRPG called Okami. Most JRPGs, it's a JRARPG to be fair, have fishing in them on some level. Even Monster Hunter's got some badass fishing in it. You can get some really rare ones to put into your armor. Similar system with this game, but the hierarchy and the tip-offs where you get to go, and the bigger pike and really cool ideas with the salmon and the trout. It is a massive piece of content against an already wealthy game. So let's get to that now, and that's my real answer to this too slow complaint with this game, is the bullet to bullet, the day to day, the combat that you come across both in campaign and on a random level, I feel is some of Rockstar's best, because you have that Max Payne slowdown on the Deadeye and a beautifully natural feeling cover system. Like riding with the whole gang to some destination that you're either going to blow up or just eliminate, some big gang camp, and the whole crew is with you, the music fires up, you've got mist, amazing moonlight. This is again reverberated when there's a bunch of you online and you've got a tough quest to get round. You may have to clear out some huge mansion, and by the way, this is about 37% through. It isn't too major story spoiler, and it has definitely got that Django Unchained feel with an almost identical mansion on a plantation. Two things shine out for the combat on this game for me, and it firstly is that dissipation, be it in a doorway, be it on the cart that you're hiding behind, or barrel. It doesn't hold back on splintering wood, and the audio is incredible. Secondly, it's also got incredible gun differential, given different characterizations to really important and key weaponry of the period. There's also gun oil and cleaning and the maintenance, and even putting a little carving on your shotgun butt is just exactly what you want when you're talking about an open world game with this many variables and options and cosmetic changes with your equipment.
Any more of you upstairs? I'm coming for you. You hear me? You creeps hiding. Come out where I can.
Also, thirdly, as a bonus, it's one of the most gory open world games out there with an 18 certificate. It gives it that line of maturity desperately needed to make a decent Western.
I survived them all. Our fight will live on.
Jesus.
How's it looking up there?
So I shall attempt to conclude. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a slightly laid-back sandbox game, especially against some of the more razzly-dazzly titles we see nowadays. But it still holds up massively, and it still offers some in-engine mechanics that we haven't even seen in other games yet, and its sequel or any other Rage Engine content, including GT6, is going to be absolutely amazing. And I think that's where to look if you want more white knuckle excitement. A sequel to this is going to be something I would grab with 3 hands, and even that zombie nightmare mode I still secretly wish for.
Socorro! Por favor!
Stay back.
Do you think Rockstar will give us any more Red Dead Redemption 2 10th generation content? Maybe we'll see some exclusive DLC, a little bit like the Horizon Zero Dawn, Forbidden West, and that Burning Shores. By the way, I did get half decent fish, and with all fishing excursions, you only get them in the piss poor rain in the middle of the night. I have been Couch Coop, and we'll see you down there.
The many miles we walk, the many things we learn, the building of a shrine, only just to burn.